Hi everyone, welcome for joining us today on the topic of trading in the new normal. This is part of a series of workshops that we've been delivering on behalf of Mole Valley District Council. Today we are focusing on the hospitality sector, and we are keen to have an open session, an interactive session. We want people to take part. If you're happy to, we'd like you to keep your mics open and we will be asking questions. If you don't want to take part, then obviously feel free. If you've got any specific questions, you can contact us on the chat facility at the bottom of the page. And really, what we want to explore today is we want to make it quite interactive. You know, the world's changed a hell of a lot in the last 4 months. It's changed a hell of a lot in the last 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, depending on whether you're a retail business, a hospitality food business, or a close contact services business. And we are providing these kind of workshops in and around the country. We are talking to independent businesses around the country, and what's becoming abundantly clear is life is tough for some and very very good for others. Some businesses we've spoken to are trading their socks off at levels way above what they were doing pre-COVID, and a number of other businesses are really struggling. They've done what they need to do, they've done all the legal requirements, they've got the business open, they've made the changes they've had to make, and yet business is only 20 or 30% of what it used to be. So hopefully today we're going to discuss some ideas of things that have been tried, issues that people have faced elsewhere, things that other businesses may have tried successfully or not successfully, and we're keen to discuss your own experience as well. So if you've got any particular questions as we go through, any particular ideas of things that you've tried, then please feel free to join in. So, Mike, do you want to go through
Well,
introductions to us and the
well,
work?
Paul and I, for those that haven't met us before, we are long in the tooth retailers in the broadest sense. Although we've worked together now at the retail group for over 20 years, we're the two directors of our small business. And for 25, 26 years, part of the mix of what we do is we provide support and help and performance growth support to small independent businesses, large multiples, international retail businesses. It's sort of it's everything from HSBC down to market traders. Is sort of what we class as retail. We also develop strategies and plans to improve town centres, and really the one thing that's sort of different, we've now, this is probably the seventh workshop we've done for Mole Valley. We delivered three as sort of more sort of webinars. We've done some as more interactive workshops, and today this is was really sort of to give a chance for businesses to throw some questions at us. So we've got a bit of a script, but if there are any pressing things to ask, far away, and and we can deal with those. And if you've got, then we can go back to the script as need be. Okay, and then if not, we will. I've mentioned the one-to-one support already, so Paul will you can access those, Emily, either by contacting Emily or even by contacting us. Our contact details will appear at the end. And we can add you onto the list of businesses that we're going to speak to on a one-to-one basis. So I'm just going to sort of, we tend to treat these in the same way as if we were sat with you talking about your business. So our normal start point is always to sort of think about the customer. So Mike, you said something which I've already made a note of, about your customers are, your events customers are champing at the bit to hold their events. And so, are you getting lots of contact from them?
Yeah, I mean, we're having probably conversations once a fortnight. We try not to be on top of each other, but we've got one main client who kind of is liaising with all the others to try and see what they can put together. But
Okay.
stumbling blocks we keep coming across are the local councils saying, sorry, you can't hold this event because there's no guarantee it's going to be less than 30 people. The venues, right, can't meet the COVID-19 criteria, right, for safe access, or the what they want for catering, like teas and coffees. There's issues over that because we do a lot of teas and coffees for clients, right? And how can we provide that on a safe format, right? Of being able to provide the teas and coffees for their customers, because we do a lot of exhibitions and customer consultancy work with public.
Okay, I mean it's a strange one, isn't it? You know, because I spent the whole of last weekend at something that in another world is almost a glorified event. I was at Portobello Road Market, you know, and there were even with the reduced footfall on the vintage and designer end of the market, there were still most of the time more than 30 people around. You know, and this is an outdoor street market. Part of it's under a canopy. And I think that for the same client, we've just had a look at something up in Malvern at the Three Counties Showground, and they hold stacks of events. And what was interesting was that one of their regular events is an antiques fair, which is normally indoors, but for them to be able to deliver that antiques fair, they've moved it to an outdoor antiques fair. So they've sort of taken the event that was normally within a large barn, and so to sort of cope with the 30 person limit, they've taken it outdoors, and then it can be open to the wider public. I think Paul will know, he's read more on the guidelines, but the key thing for minimizing risk is about being outside and having free and easy air movement. But I would have thought that, you know, if you're able to deliver your events outside, then you can certainly work with either clusters of 30 people outside or even larger numbers.
Yeah, problem is that most of the events can't be done outside because they use sound systems, projection, and stuff like that, and mapping, because it's all to do with design and consultancy work, to do with development sites all over the UK.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
So it's not just in one venue. It's we can go anything from a hotel room to a shopping centre, empty store, to a village hall. It's all sorts of. We never know from one event to the next what we're actually going to be turning up to.
Now, one of the success factors we've seen elsewhere in all of these webinars is certain businesses almost learning lessons from other types of business, and I think that, you know, so for example, we had not quite on your scale of event, but we were delivering a webinar for over in Essex, Brentwood, and one of the key things that there was a lady that ran a tutoring business. So this was right at the sort of the initial first phase of opening up, and she said, well, you know, my problem is that people tend to come into my office and and they bring their children for the tutor. They leave, they're left with me for 45 minutes to an hour, and away they go. And what we actually said was, well, you know, again, it was, even then, we're going back a few weeks now, Paul, was about taking her tutoring outside into a gazebo. It had the added benefit of making it very visible to a wider group of customers that were up and down the high street of this smaller town. B, she could have posters promoting what she was doing. C, it was safe. And also at that particular moment in time, with all the schools still being closed, there were thousands of potential customers going past her. So, you know, she was able to turn what was a real negative into an absolute positive for her and her business.
Mike, sorry, Mike, other Mike, not my Mike. Do you know a chap called Jeremy Webb, who's the president?
Yeah, no, Jeremy very well. He's a good friend, because
okay.
I haven't
spoken to him recently about it.
Yeah, we have meetings every week regarding various things that are going on regarding the catering side of our business. So it is quite it's quite interesting, because Jeremy understands my business anyway, because he's been involved with what we've been doing for probably 2 or 3 years now, of different things that we put on. Because I have another hat that I wear, which is the Federation of Small Business. I'm the area lead for East Surrey. Okay. So hence the reason why I know Jeremy very well and do a lot of events with him.
Yeah.
So it's quite.
Okay. The reason I ask is Jeremy attended one of our prior workshops, and we did end up having a sort of fairly long conversation about events and what you can and what you can't do. And it, as with a lot of the guidance and law, it's sort of there's a lot of repetition,
Yeah.
but there's also a little bit of sort of contradiction. So there is a statement in one of the guidance, which I think was the visitor economy guidance issued by HMG, which did specifically say you can have more than 30 people attending an event, providing the venue is able to operate safely within COVID guidelines.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. We had an event booked for the end of July, which was in Maidenhead, which would have been fine for us to have been able to meet all the criteria that was needed, right, putting everything in place. However, the venue itself couldn't guarantee it was going to be safe because it was a shopping centre, and they actually couldn't control the people going through the shopping centre. They actually had to shut the shopping centre for 2 days because people just would not follow the guidance. This is the problems that we're getting with several other places that we've got.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Mike's apologies. Your sound went a bit intermittent then, so hopefully I'm clear now. Paul, am I clear? Give me a nod.
Yeah, fine.
Yes, you are.
So we just down the road, as part of Crawley Town Centre reopening, we were involved in all of the signage across the town centre and helping them with their implementation. And the shopping centre owners there of the County Mall actually, I thought had got a really good system in place. What made it work was that they had a lot more signage advising people of where to go, which side to walk, right from on the entrance. They actually had no entry signs and one-way signs on their doors, and then they followed it up immediately. And what was interesting was that people were just almost without seeing them look at the signs, they were following the signs as instructed. Whereas in other places where there's been sort of a limited amount of signage used, and I will say elsewhere in Crawley, where the council were more responsible for the sign, there was sort of almost a bit of a random free-for-all, people going up and down, crossing over, even though they were trying to manage it. But it was my lesson from that was actually a lot of signage, repeating the signage very early on in the start of the customer journey. Once they got into the shopping centre, it was then they didn't need as much. But at that site, it was that almost sort of not quite brainwashing, but really overt information at the start point. But that was quite an interesting point. And again, I think that there are, go back to what I saw over at Portobello over the weekend, to try and manage that would have been like herding cats. It would have been an impossible task.
Yeah.
I think the difficulty is as business hosts or managers or operators, you can't be responsible for how the customer reacts. You can do what you can. So, for instance, as of last Friday, we now have to wear masks in shops. Well, depending on what shop you go in, people are or aren't adhering to that, and you can't make people wear a mask. You can't force it. All you can say to people is, you must wear a mask before you come in. And if they decide not to, then you always have the sanction of refusing to serve people. So it's something that you can't necessarily control and do. And obviously, if it gets out of hand, then the police are obviously the last option. But I suspect they're going to be quite reluctant to come out to deal with a non-mask compliance issue. So sort of do what you can and try and lead and try and help, but you can't be responsible for the actions of all consumers.
Sorry, Mike, go on.
You only got to look at London the other day when they had the challenge to that at Hyde Park, when they had 3,000 people turn up at Hyde Park, challenging the thing about wearing face masks.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it was a strange one because I travelled into London Friday, Saturday on public transport, and I was expecting, I just thought, oh well, there'll be most people won't be observing the face mask, but actually, I would say as high as 99% of the people I saw, and I will put a big caveat that there was very, very, very few people using trains and tubes on Friday, which probably is another evidence of why city centres are struggling in terms of generating business. But 99% adoption of face masks, certainly on public transport, out on the street and in the shopping, I would say shopping areas. Admittedly, you're not obliged to wear them on the street, but even sort of a fairly high adoption of people wearing masks. Sue, I wanted to just come to you now. Sorry, there you go. I woke you up. So I remember that I think last time we spoke, you were just about to start at the Grange. Is that right?
That's correct.
Right. Okay. And how's it going?
Well, I'm now in day 6.
Day 6. Right. Yeah. You
So,
look well for it.
Plenty to keep me busy, lots of things to consider. We operate sort of on site and also off site. So I'm currently sort of reviewing where we're at and what our offer is and where this lies. Obviously on site at the moment, because we're sort of still essentially locked down, there's lots of issues there where we need to deal with. And we haven't even fully opened our off-site operations yet. Right. So we've got masses. So at the moment, I'm at an information gathering stage, but we operate both retail and online and also out of retail stores, and also quite a big catering operation, cafe sort of style. But again, that's in-house. So as I say, at the moment, I'm really looking at what we're going to do and looking at our pathway to sort of opening up when we can. Right.
Okay. I can share some recent, probably some positives and some negatives. Certainly on the catering side, and certainly John and Mike, it'd be interesting. You've both been to pubs recently, but we went out for a family Sunday lunch at a well-established pub near us that had been closed and was even closed when they first could open. They'd stayed closed. They'd only opened, I think, 2 or 3 days before we went in there. Interestingly, as a family, we picked it because we knew it had a large dining area, so we thought they'll be able to. So there was even a bit of the consumer wanting to feel safe. But the major success was that from the very first moment you approached this pub, the Red Barn outside Blindley Heath, it was really clear what was expected of you. There was somebody manning the welcome desk. There was a point where you had to stop. You couldn't get any closer to the welcome desk. They confirmed that you were booked in. When I phoned to make the booking, they'd asked me whether we were from more than one family group or more than one social group. And so they double checked that as we arrived. They said, okay, so you're all from one household, yes. The same member of staff who served us then took us to the table, and they explained that they would take all the orders for the drinks, the food, but everything would be deposited at one end of the table, and then we'd be responsible for passing the food and the drink around. And it worked. The system worked really well. The service was outstanding, but there was the staff weren't wearing visors, they weren't wearing gloves, they weren't wearing masks. All the safety sort of security had happened at the point of entry. We felt comfortable. We were then relaxed, and the whole thing was very relaxed. I had a similar thing. Again, also going for my first pint from a barrel at a local pub, and we went there on a Wednesday. Now, I've been going to that pub on a Wednesday every night after playing football for about 11 years, And normally when we turn up at 9:30, you can count on one hand how many other customers other than our football crowd go. And that's why we go, because we have the place to ourselves. I went on a Wednesday about an hour earlier than we would be after football. The whole of the outside area, every table was booked, every table was occupied, and the landlord, who we know, he said, "We have never been as busy since we reopened." He said, "I don't know where all of these people come from." He said, "But many of them have never been to us before, but they've now been back to us multiple times." So for whatever reason, his customer base has radically changed. But he, again, he was large beer barrel at the front, his notebook. He walked in, and he said, "Oh, your name?" And I said, "You know my name. I've been drinking here every Wednesday." He said, no, I need your name. So he wrote it down in his book. He said, "And your telephone number?" I said, "You've got my telephone." Regardless of how well he was going through his thing, he said, "Right, you're going to sit over on that table. We will come and take your order." And they did. There was, whenever a glass was empty, it was taken away. And I thought, I would never have thought that he would do that with his business. He was, to actually make such a change with his business and to grow it. But he had a way system for going gents loo, and there was a board that you had to turn to show that it was occupied before you even got to the door, and it was really, really well thought out. But just taking it to another level for his business. Sorry, Paul, go on.
No, you're. I don't know if it's just for me, but you were very stuttery there.
All right, okay. Apologies, everybody.
Your voice and your picture. No, I think it's a strange one because we've just gone through probably the most scary time as a retail business in certainly my 52 years of living on this world. And in some ways, we seem to have gone back to the 70s and 80s. We're sort of going back to old school service. We're going back to kind of old school personal contact. And I think, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's a fantastic opportunity for independent businesses to shine, to thrive, to stand out, because a lot of the bigger chains, a lot of the bigger, certainly the multiple stores, it's quite a soulless experience going in some of those shops. I haven't been to many town centres, but people are sort of hiding behind perspex glass. It's very, you've got big queues. It's all a bit scary, to be honest. Whereas I think small independent businesses, providing you can show that you've adapted, that you can show that you're safe, you can show that that the system works that you've come up with, and don't ever stop asking how can I get better. Keep on doing that. But I think if you don't hesitate in telling people what to do, the customer, in terms of kind of simple calls to action, do this, come here, do this, wait here, people won't have an issue with that because they see that you're being safe. They see that you're operating in the way that you should be. And if anything, if you're not doing all that stuff, then you're going to stand there and say, "There we go, thank you, Mike. Who'd have thought we'd have done this before?"
Yeah.
And if you don't look like you've changed, if you don't look like you've made an effort, then you're going to stand out as being someone who just doesn't look safe. We've had businesses that we've been helping who've been complaining about customers walking away, and you ask the question, "But what have you done to show you're safe?" "Well, left my door open." Well, you need to do more than that. You need to do that as well, but also you need to do a lot more than that. So, this example here, it's a business near to me. Actually, it's a fantastic pizza takeaway chain called restaurant called Mama Dough. They've got 4 businesses, independent, and the first thing you see as you come to their doorway is takeaway customers here. Obviously, their door's open now. And delivery drivers this way, because delivery drivers, Uber Eats drivers, etc., have been flagged as potentially a higher risk. So you need to keep the two of them apart. But make it obvious. Whatever you're going to do, just do it. Make it obvious. Show that you're safe, and get that word of mouth out. And I think, Mike, your pub manager is probably benefiting from that. He's probably got lots of other people saying what a good job he's doing, and now's the time to be doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and I suppose I come back to Mike, Georgina, I come back to you touched on having a catering side to your business, outside catering side to your business. And one of the first businesses we spoke to in one of our first workshops was somebody, this was over in Essex, and they were they were an event business, a catering event business, and they had their first event the next day for one of the London universities, and they were going to have about 130 students who they were having to serve drinks and food to, and the business owner said, we've tried to think about how we're going to do this, and again, we said, well, it's sort of, can we learn lessons from another sector? And we said, why not have a service table whereby you, instead of taking the drinks directly to the people, you put the drinks onto a service table. Customers are the far side, you're this side, and then it's about putting the drinks down and then the food down, and then customers coming along and helping themselves. And one of the things we'd seen somebody else do, and I years ago, this is nothing to do with COVID, where people were using their uniforms to get over selling messages. And I remember on a street food market, an Asian food vendor had 3 or 4 staff, and on the front it had then the business name, but every time they turned around, on the back of their shirts it said, we do outside catering, with the phone number. And so the lady from the events business, when I told this story, turned it on its head, and she produced T-shirts for her, polo shirts for her staff that said, we're here to serve you from 2 meters. So it was that. So again, making the point that we're going to deliver service, but we're going to do it in a safe way. So I think they were just learning lessons from different areas and different aspects. The other thing that we certainly consistently, and Paul was a bit polite when he said it earlier, is that we've picked up from a number of smaller businesses that and I'm going to whiz past these. Oh, no, actually, I shouldn't be whizzing past those. I'll come back to those. Is this sort of, in terms of, they've sort of, a lot of businesses said, well, we're open. We decide whether it's online, virtual, social media. We've put up the sign saying we're open for business, but nobody's coming into us. And one of the things that we've realised is that more than ever, it's about doing the things that you can do to chase more business, whether that's selling more to the people that already buy from you. And that's, so going back to your existing customer base and thinking about, why do they buy from us? What do they buy from us? Can I sell them more of what they already buy? Can I add something into it and increase the transaction value? That's, we spend life trying to teach sandwich shops to make sure they sell coffee and cold drinks when everybody buys a sandwich, because it'll increase the average transaction value by whatever it will be. And then secondly is about understanding how can we attract sort of new people into our business. What are we doing to attract the new people? And I think that's sort of a key thing that a lot of businesses have just gone, right, okay, I've got to get open. I've done all the get open, got my PE, got my code in place. But what are the 2 things that I'm trying to do to actually go back to existing customers and about trying to appeal to more customers? So, sorry, John, you're going. Ask away.
Oh no, just one brief thing. Say it's a bit remote because I have this cafe down in West Wales, and Wales is still largely locked up, but it is freeing up. And I was literally, it was about early March. I was just about to sign the lease for this new tenant, and of course they couldn't go in. But we stayed in contact, and then fortunately, at the very beginning of June, she sent me a deposit, first month's rent, and she started up purely on takeaway aspects, which is what she's still doing. Only like 2 or 3 days a week. Everything's kind of through the front door, but she was really busy on Facebook. I think she had some kind of competition running on Facebook, so getting people in, and there was either a quiz or something and a prize of some stuff there. and obviously encouraging people to share on all of that. But she was trying to, think up combined products which you do on a takeaway basis. So she was doing kind of afternoon teas with in boxes and things, and good presentation. So, I mean, fortunately, it sounds as though it's going okay. And if the weather holds in West Wales, which it never does, but if it does, then there should be some more holiday makers, and she's got perhaps a month or so to keep it going. But she was also stocking locally as well. So, but she's basically building from a zero customer base.
Okay, Paul has got umpteen anecdotes about helping cafes and coffee shops and ideas. I've got one that I know has worked and seen worked, and please tell her to do this one thing, right?
Mhm.
Which is everybody that buys a takeaway product from her, she needs to be using that opportunity to pre-sell the next order. So in other words, give them a little list that they can just tick off whether they want another coffee or a sandwich or whatever it is. So they can tick off the list. They can then take a picture of it and WhatsApp it to you and say and tell her when they would like to pick it up. She can then phone them, take the payment, and then get it ready for them, so they can just walk in and take it away. And then it repeats. So all this is, it's the IKEA version, the little notepad that you get when you walk around IKEA and they give you the pencil and you write the product code. It's do that for your coffee shop.
You kind of break out with it, but so a bit like in Argos almost.
Correct.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I like it.
John, we had a business near us which was a French. They were sounds wrong. They're a French pizza business. The guy's quite good. The owner's French and an absolute gourmand, but he realised the location that he's in, the customer wasn't ready for the quality of his food, so he's had to sort of rescale his ambitions.
This is a local business to you, is it?
It is in Lewisham.
They took one look at you and thought we need to sell pizzas. Yeah, I know.
He's the business in Lewisham, and what he did was he realised when total lockdown happened, that he had a load of food in the fridge that was going off. He had a load of stuff on the shelves that was like gold dust, i.e. flour, yeast, and eggs, and so on. So he put together a simple pre-order sheet that he sent out to a few friends, encouraged them to send it to other people. That was then shared amongst we've got a WhatsApp group on our street, so that appeared on there. And basically it was literally just it's a provisions order list, and you basically printed it off, as Mike says, tick the bits that you wanted, and then they were doing delivery as well. So it's just, as much as possible, make it as easy for the customer to buy from you. That could be in advance, and it saves your time during the purchase process, and it saves their time if they're nervous about picking stuff up.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, what Mike was saying earlier on, though, I think so much of it just relies upon getting the confidence for the customers. As you say, I mean, I've been doing volunteering during the lockdown, and going into shops, and and people were keeping the distance. But as people have come out, I mean, you see some that are obviously hugely nervous and really scared and fully masked up months ago. But I mean, one example was, I know in Epsom, in the Ashley Centre in Epsom, their signage was great. As I say, one-way systems within a shopping centre. And yet I was in a Leatherhead's Lidl yesterday, and it was a nightmare. Well, I walked out. Long queues. They weren't manning the tills. I know it's not directly hospitality, but yeah, unless you can provide a safe space, then people aren't going to go in there. They're certainly not going to come and sit down and eat food from you.
There was yet another survey published earlier this week, and I will caveat that it was published by an online retail agency, so we have to take it with a pinch of salt. But it was a survey based on 1,500 online shoppers, and and over 60% were uncomfortable in going back to retail fixed built retail environments. And we've seen a number of other surveys still saying where anything between 40 and 60% of consumers are still uncomfortable about going out into town centres, and footfall levels are still a long way short of where they would be normally, and that's where it comes back to. It's about treating each customer almost as they're an absolute nugget of a little gem that you have to nurture and polish and hone and look after in a certain way. And I think that where Paul's talking about that customer service element and it's regardless of whatever your business is, it's about delivering customer service. And as Mike, I'm going to get to something right at the outset, where you council not believing you can do it safely, and and venues not thinking you can do it safely. I think the key is you've got to be able to demonstrate that you can deliver these things safely in a COVID socially distanced way, and you've got the infrastructure to manage it and manage the environment. As you said, the one thing is very difficult to manage are the end user punters, the consumers. But if you can manage the environment and manage the process, then that's as clear as you can get.
Yeah.
Actually, Mike, I think you can manage the customer to an extent. I think by managing managing your peak periods is probably one of the most important areas. So if you've got a business which is busy, busy in the morning because you're next to the train station and people used to buy coffee from you, then obviously that's not going to happen now. But if you can try and whether it's having, specific times of the day, 10 till 11 is family time, before 10 o'clock is elderly shoppers time, as much as possible, try and make the whole process as smooth as possible. So getting people to pre-order, getting people, you managing the sort of peak time. So when you're busiest, don't be trying to offer your most complicated and time-intensive service. So again, a direct example: a local butcher's to ours. When COVID first started, he had queues around the block, and I suggested to him that he might want to introduce a pre-order system, which he thought I was mad. And then about a month later, when I went back, funny enough, he had a pre-ordering system. I got told off for having the audacity to buy 5 or 6 things. And he said, why don't you just send me I've got a WhatsApp group, and I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. Tell me just private message what you want, and I'll have it all ready for you. Stop taking so long and ordering all these extra stuff. So again, you can sort of, you can manage that. And he's now actively encouraging people to come on Thursday, Friday to buy their meat in advance for the weekend as well. So, it's about managing that customer expectation, customer experience, purchase experience, and getting the word out to as many people as you can.
Sorry, Mike, you were going to say something just then?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because one of the questions that our client said was, normally we use cups and saucers, right?
Yeah.
For the cups coffees, and they were talking about using throwaway paper cups and bits and pieces, right? However, we also that was raised, right, was the issue, right, of milk and sugar and stuff like that, and you can buy packets of sugar, that's fine. You can buy little cartons of milk, but not everybody wants that type of milk. They want fresh milk normally. And sweeteners only come in little containers. You can't actually do them as an individual packet. And it was like, well, you're going to have to wipe it down every time you do something. You're going to wipe all the surfaces down every time a customer comes up. You've got 40 or 50 customers waiting to be served tea or coffee. That's just not a practical way of going ahead with things. It was just trying to put around.
The way you get, a way, not the way, a way is that you actually, the people who are queuing up to get, the 40, 50 customers who will inevitably want to touch as you said, they want to touch the milk jug, they want to touch the sugar, the sweetener, whatever. The key thing is if you get them to hand sanitize at whilst they're in the queue, then ostensibly, I mean, as much as we can, then once they've hand sanitized, they'll be clean. And then so it's so as much as we can, who knows how clean we are. But there's that, because then once they've hand sanitized, if they then touch their face, does that mean they're no longer clear? I mean, it is
a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. But the only thing, it's that sort of right. What can I do to do this? It's a bit like, I mean, the other issue we had was again talking, and we've mentioned this to other pubs and hospitality venues because it came out of a conversation with a hairdresser. Was that no stereotyping here, but this was a hairdressers in Essex that employed 15 people. So obviously it comes back to everything you see on the TV. But they were saying that normally what they would have is that the customer would come in, they would go to the reception desk, and then they'd make contact with the person on reception. Then a junior member of staff would walk them from the reception desk to the chair where they were going to have their hair done. Then another member of staff would come out and wash their hair. And then eventually the stylist would come out, through a cloud of smoke and loud music and flares and cut their hair. But anyway, and then somebody else would tidy up afterwards. So one customer had contact with 5 members of staff. And so once we'd sort of had this conversation, we said, well, why don't you just do what they do in a restaurant? Please wait here to be seated. There isn't a human person that Then the stylist, because it's all pre-booked appointments, then have the stylist come out, and they one person serves that customer throughout, and even handles taking the payment whilst they're having their hair done. And we said that way that if then that one customer then unfortunately reports themselves as being ill, having COVID, it's only that one member of staff that's had contact, and it's only that one member of staff that you lose from your business, not. And we've had conversations with large pubs where they've got people waiting on tables. Again, it's about you don't have to close the whole pub if you know that. Johnny and Deirdre and their 5 family members are all sat on one particular table. They've only been served by Alice, and away you go. So I think that there's it's about managed processes can not only to the optimum customer benefit but also to your staff benefit. Sorry, John.
Oh no, sorry. When you finished, I just had a question.
Yep, far away.
Oh well, as far as the information and data that you take, let's say, for people coming in, obviously it's for track and trace in the event of someone saying they're positive. Are there GDPR implications in that, or as to how you store it, how long you keep it for?
Yeah.
Do you have to be seen to show or have a process of what you're going to do with it?
I can answer that. You have to keep it for 21 days, and that's in the COVID guidance. There are GDPR implications in as much as once you capture that data, and you only need to capture the name of the lead booker and their phone number. So you don't need other people's details, but as part of your recording system, you need to know where they sat and how many people they were with. So you do need to capture that. And there are 2 things which have sort of implications in terms of GDPR. The first one is you're not allowed to use it for marketing purposes. So you can't then start sending text to them a couple of weeks later, unless you ask them beforehand. So when you take their recording, you say, we need, as part of the COVID guidelines, we need a lead number, we need a number and a number and a name for the lead booker. Would you be interested if we keep you in touch with some other events and promotions that we run in the future? And if they say yes, then you can use it for promotional purposes. And then the other one, which is something which is also quite important, is you have a legal duty to keep that information safe and secure. And safe and secure means that it can't be accessed. And specifically, that means that if that information has been held on a digital file on a laptop or an iPad, the files have to be password protected. Or if it's a manual record, they have to be locked away in somewhere with a key. It doesn't have to be a safe; it can be a cupboard or a drawer. But you do have a duty. And then the final thing is, after the 21 days, when you then destroy it, it has to be destroyed safely, i.e., shredded. It can't just be chucked in the bin.
Yeah. And for digital things, just deleting the file is sufficient, or well, yeah.
If it's password, yeah. If it's passworded, yes, you can just delete it.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's not directly related to commercial stuff, but within sort of sports clubs, from August the 1st, football matches are allowed to be played. Again, the suggestion there, you've got to have a list of all the players, all the spectators, and everything else. In the same with the 21 days. I'm just thinking, even with kind of catering on the sides of those events. My son played cricket on Sunday. That was the third weekend. The first 2 weekends they said, got to bring your own drinks, got to bring your own teas.
Yeah.
Last Sunday, teas were provided by the club, but they didn't have physical drinks of teas. They had to bring their own drinks still, but there were sandwiches, and they were saying, if you've got particular dietary needs, then say so beforehand. I wasn't there when it was done, but I mean, it could have just been the fact that they pre-ordered and there was a bunch of sandwiches. But the other thing, what Mike was saying about kind of lining up to have cups of tea and cake, a dress or milk and sugar and stuff. Within the cricket match, I think it was every 6 overs, all the players had to come in. They all had to hand sanitize. The balls were hand sanitized. The wicketkeeper's gloves. So, yeah, that's cricket's reference to it. But football will be different again. I'm more involved with football, and I've got to go through a whole lot of documentation. We're talking about, in terms of certainly with anyone who attends somebody who's injured, has got to come in with PPE equipment. Would that be the case within a hospitality environment? If someone needs medical attention, is there any need for that level of?
I think the important thing to say about all of this is 99.9% of the guidelines are that they're guidelines. They're not legal responsibilities. So, for instance, do you need to, if you're serving in a pub or a cafe and you're serving to people's tables, should the person serving be wearing a visor, a mask? Yes, it's recommended it should, but it's not mandatory that they have to. So for things like, if you need to save someone's life, urgent assistance, and you don't have a mask to hand, do you know what? Just do it. There's no issue there. Common sense rules. The law is based on the principle of reasonableness. If a reasonable person, if a person would reasonably do that, at that particular point, then you get away with it. The one specific thing that is worth pointing out is, and it's more relevant to close contact services, which is if you're working in the danger zone, which is basically up to 1 meter in front of the face, and you're facing face to face. That is the only time you need to wear a physical visor. So you need to wear a full coverage face visor. That's one of the few areas which is very specifically stated. On the whole, the rest of them are advisory. So go back to your football example, because I play cricket. We've looked into this as well, and there's evidence that suggests every time the cricket ball is hit with a bat, the viral load drops off. So therefore, I'd imagine a similar thing will happen in cricket, in football. Obviously, the ball spends a lot of the time rolling across the ground. That also cleans it as well. So there's actually very little evidence that, despite what Boris said about the cricket ball being a vector of the disease, most of the actual medical evidence is it's fine. So providing you follow common sense guidelines, keep your distance, make sure you're washing your hands, try and be socially distanced if you can, 2 meters if you can, and you've got lots of air surrounding you. These are all the things that will basically pretty much keep you safe. Sue, have you got any specific questions or issues that you've come across already? Particular things?
Well, as I say, I'm very much at the information gathering point at the moment. I know I've got a one-to-one booked with you guys. I think
Yeah.
the week after next.
Week on Tuesday. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. But as always, really useful. Lots of notes for me to take down, and I'm hoping week on Tuesday I'll be in a better position to throw a few questions at you. But I was actually just typing. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to duck out. I've got another meeting at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
But as always, really useful. Lovely to meet you guys, and thanks again.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck, boat gathering. See you soon.
Bye. Thanks.
John and Mike and Georgina, any other specific kind of questions, issues, problems that you've come across, things that you haven't got an answer to yet?
No, I don't think so.
No,
It's just getting it all in place. I think it's
Yeah.
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 I'm still probably possibly toying, with the idea of actually trying to start something in this area rather than rely on my tenant being successful elsewhere. So, but no, it's been really useful.
We've got some other people that we know have got a cafe that they're talking about setting up and working from September.
Yeah.
But we're not, and we know a couple of other caterers who are having the same problem. In fact, I thought one of them was going to be on today because they've got an issue, right? They do a lot of events in houses.
All right. Okay.
I thought they were going to join us today as part of this afternoon, because their issue is that they normally go into the house, prepare the food, then serve it. But of course, they can't do service at the moment, and there's no updates on that at all. So all they can do is deliver the food, which is not easy if the client wants the food piping hot. Delivered or pre-prepared, right? It has to be laid out or whatever. It just makes things very, very difficult. So employing staff and all this type of stuff is quite difficult.
And what sort of numbers of people would be going to those events?
Anything from 20 upwards.
Parties, sort of domestic parties?
Yeah, domestic house parties, yeah. Yeah,
Right.
there's quite a few events in houses. But there's quite a few of us that are local caterers that are having the same issues of what can and what we can't do.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, those kind of events are not allowed anyway, regardless of whether they go for catering or not. But can you not serve people outside? Can that not be just sort of?
They've tried one the other day, and it was most bizarre in the sense that they had a wedding reception, and the guests were spread round three houses and 2 gardens.
Yeah, right. There you go. I like that's inventive.
Yeah.
It's a lot of running around for the operator.
Yeah, it was, because 2 of the gardens were at the front of the house and 2 were at the back of the house. But each table was an individual family, and each individual family had its own menu, right, for what they wanted. So, and then they had all the other issues, right, of different types of food, whether people are vegan and vegetarian and all the rest of it, right? So, it makes it a lot more complicated and a lot harder, especially when you can't have staff there to actually serve it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just getting back into the swing of the new, I suppose. We've not had any work at all since March, so we need to get some work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is 30 then the absolute maximum that you can have in any kind of public space?
No, you can. A lot of it comes down to the venue. So if it's outside, you can have up to 30 in one particular gathering, but providing you keep them separate. Basically, the 2 main rules are: if you have, if you're meeting inside or doing anything inside, you can't have more than 2 households meeting each other and being in the same space. If you're doing it outside, you can have up to 6 individuals from different households, but again, they have to stay in their little 6. So we were working for someone recently who was doing catering at a golf club. They were doing the annual awards, and what they did there is they split the whole awards. They had a marquee which they split into 4 quarters. Each person could only stay in that particular quarter, and then beyond that, they were all given individual tables where they had a table number, and they weren't allowed to go and sit on other tables. They had to stay on their own space. So I think one of the big issues is how you manage and police it. And I think that's one of the problems. It's the onus is on the sort of the people organising the event to make sure they're COVID aware and know what they're doing. And it's very difficult to as a business operator to put yourself in that situation, knowing that they might not necessarily be, might not have the knowledge you have, or may not be even taking it seriously as what they should be. But I think I totally agree, Georgina. It's a very scary situation, and once you do get back, it will be you will be nervous, but then you'll do that one, and you'll learn from it, and then you'll do the next one, and then gradually you'll get back into the swing of things, and hopefully, as the country goes back to normality, if there are local flare-ups, they'll be managed accordingly. But for the rest of us, we'll be gradually, slowly getting back to normal.
Mike and Georgina, there's one thing I would say, and forgive me if this is the most obvious statement of the last hour, is that piggybacking on your point about saying we haven't we're now back in business and we haven't been able to do any business since March. The number one thing is just making it clear to all and sundry, whether that's existing clients, your existing contact base, your future potential clients. You have to really make it clear that you are open and ready for business, and it's almost like prompting them, reminding them that you're open and ready for business as well. And I think that's a key thing. What was that? There was a lady that last week or a couple of weeks ago, a lady that basically her whole business, she had a little sandwich shop that was outside a school, and so her business was about selling food to the school kids, but in a residential area. She wasn't in a town centre at all, and so we said, well, and she was saying, I haven't been able to, the school basically isn't open, I haven't been able to generate any business. And we said, well, actually what you will have is you'll have thousands of parents who are fed up of making lunch every day, and they'd love somebody else to make the lunch for their kids on 1 or 2 days a week. Why not promote yourself as being able to make the lunch, and either the kids come and pick it up or you deliver it or whatever? And she'd sort of gone into that. She'd totally gone into the, I'm shut down, I'm locked down, and all she needed was a bit of a spark to think, actually no, there is a way I can open. But I certainly think it's take every opportunity, whether it's your social media, whether your windows are maybe not physical windows, but they might be website windows, and certainly using your existing client base as a way of spreading the message that you're open. That would be a key thing.
We've done a lot of that. We've also advised a lot of our clients on what we can provide and how they can protect themselves on having the events.
Excellent.
We've actually been out and bought what they call split shields, which are the big screens.
Yes.
To be able to put in front of ourselves and for our clients as well, which they'll hire off for us rather than buying, because some of them are quite expensive. So it's one of those. So you have to be careful how you do things, but you've also got to make sure that it's robust enough to be transported. It's already very well having a fairly simple system of a screen that's fixed in place or on a table that's staying there permanently. But when you start moving it around, you've got to make sure it's robust enough to be able to tolerate it. So there's all those issues. It's the use of equipment, microphones, and other pieces of equipment that our clients use. We have to think about those as well, protecting them, sanitizing them. It's
and on. It's all you almost it's that checklist, isn't it? It's that sort of, here's the list. Can we demonstrate that it's clean, sanitized? How do we do it? Boom, boom.
45 items we had on one of our lists.
Right.
right, to make sure that we'll be able to meet every criteria. And they just turned around and said it's just too much to be able to do everything. It's just physically an impossibility. So.
One thing I would recommend is if you've got any businesses which haven't reopened yet or are thinking of reopening, or still nervous about reopening and wondering whether they're doing the right thing, the government have got a very good reopening checklist on their HMG COVID part of the website, where you go in and you plug it, you answer a number of preset questions in terms of what sort of sector you're in, businesses, do you have staff meetings, do you have goods in and out, and you sort of plug in these various questions, and at the bottom drops a fairly sensible list of these are the things that you need to be doing, these are the things that you need to be thinking about, these are the essential things, and these are the advisory things. So that's quite a good source of information. And the other thing I'd say is if you've got any clients or other businesses that have a specific question to do with either reopening safely, trading safely, or how to improve their performance, by all means get them to give us a call. You know, our details are on our website, the Retail Group, www.theretailgroup.co.uk. Obviously, Emily at Mole Valley, she has our details. So if you drop her a line, I'm sure she'll be happy to introduce them to us. So we're only at the end of an email or a phone call, and if we can answer it, we will. I think there's only 2 questions that we couldn't answer so far, and we've gone off and found the answers for them. So we're more than happy to help over the next few weeks.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, so I'm going to have to go shortly because I've got to make a phone call. So
I think we're just about wrapping up. So I'm gonna stop the recording. If there's anything specific you want to talk about afterwards, by all means stay on the line. Otherwise, I will say thank you for coming. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've taken a lot out of it, and see you at the next one.
Yeah,
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.